Hey guys, tonight we're peeling back the grime-encrusted curtain of medieval warfare, not the kind with gallant knights and CGI fireballs, but the real thing: itchy wool tunics, oozing wounds, and a level of discomfort you can practically smell through time. Picture yourself hunched under a smoky sky, dragging your blistered feet through muddy fields with a wooden spear that splinters. If you look at it wrong, your dinner, whatever didn't crawl away first, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments, so we can see where everyone's tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You weren't born a soldier. In the Middle Ages, you became one because something or someone decided that war was your best or only career option. Maybe a local lord owed the king a quota of warm bodies. Maybe your village had a bad harvest, and the army paid in bread and coins. Or maybe your older brother got speared last season, and you've just inherited his slot in the levy. Congratulations, you are now infantry. No training, no choice. Drafting didn't look like a flag-waving parade. It looked like a man with a scroll and a very grim expression pointing at you, while your mother cried into a turnip. You might be a thatcher, a cooper, or a swineherd yesterday, but today, you're armed, and definitely not dangerous. Medieval conscription varied wildly across regions. In England, the assize of arms in 1181 required all free men to have weapons at the ready, based on their wealth. In France, feudal obligation meant lords dragged along their tenants whenever royal banners were raised. And if you lived in the Holy Roman Empire, well, good luck keeping track of whose banner you were meant to die under. Historians still argue whether conscripts ever truly understood the wars they fought in, or if they just followed whoever yelled the loudest. But one thing's certain: you weren't enlisting for glory. You were being conscripted for survival. And no, you didn't get issued gear like a modern soldier. You got what you brought or could cobble together. If you were lucky, your lord gave you a spear. If not, maybe you sharpened a hoe or repurposed a scythe. Your armor, a padded gambeson, if you were lucky. Chainmail, if you were noble. Most peasants had nothing but thick wool and blind faith. You might expect that someone trained you before you saw action. Nope, maybe you got a half-drunk veteran yelling at you between gulps of ale. Maybe a monk tried to teach you formation, drills, using chalk on a barn wall. But mostly, you'd be told stay behind the guy with the horse and try not to die. And here's a fun tidbit. In some places, villages would literally raffle off who had to go. That's right, draw the unlucky straw, and you're off to war while your neighbor gets to keep tilling turnips. Imagine dodging arrows because of bad lottery luck. You say goodbye to your family with a mix of fear and numbness. No one cries dramatically like in the movies. Your mother just gives you hard bread and herbs, maybe a charm sewn into your tunic. Your father says nothing. Your younger siblings stare at your boots like they might vanish. You try to remember your little brother's face, in case this is the last time. Then you're herded into a ragtag column: old men, terrified boys, maybe a few grizzled guys who've done this before. You don't march in sync. You shuffle. You stumble. The guy next to you smells like goat cheese and feet, and he's probably your bunkmate now. The first camp is worse than you imagined. Mud everywhere. No tents, unless you brought one or serve someone rich. You sleep under the stars or rain clouds on a blanket that soaks through immediately. Latrines are a trench someone half dug and forgot about. You get sick. Everyone gets sick. Someone dies on the second night from fever, and no one even knows his name. Quirky footnote: some medieval commanders genuinely believed foul smells caused illness, miasma theory, so they'd burn aromatic herbs like rosemary or lavender around the camp. It smelled slightly better, but you still had dysentery. You're not fighting yet. Not really. That comes later. Right now, your war is boredom and waiting, and wondering if the bread mold on your crusty loaf counts as a vegetable. You're hungry, cold, and angry, and, the worst part, you're starting to get used to it. You hear stories around the fire. Glorious tales of knights slicing through enemies like butter. You know it's all nonsense. That knight also lost a toe to frostbite and hasn't had a bath in 2 months. Someone mentions the town of Béziers, how in 1209, during the Albigensian Crusade, papal forces massacred everyone inside. Even though some begged for mercy, the quote passed down from the papal legate is bone-chilling. Kill them all. God will know his own. You stare at the fire and wonder if that's true. Still, when the order comes to move again, you shoulder your patched-up sack and march onward, not because you're brave, but because you don't know what else to do. And somewhere inside you, a voice says, maybe, just maybe, you'll survive this long enough to return with a story worth exaggerating. You wake up with a horse stepping on your foot and a crust of dried mud in your eye. The dawn is gray, damp, and incredibly unimpressed with your suffering. Someone's yelling about formation again, but you're too busy trying to get circulation back into your leg. Your body already hurts in places you didn't know could ache, and now, it's armor time. Let's talk about that. You're handed inherit, or steal a suit of armor. And by suit, don't picture the polished marvels in museum displays. Think mixed sand match, a dented kettle helm that smells like onions, a mail hauberk with rings missing across the chest, and boots that belong to someone with much smaller feet, but apparently better social connections. Armor is heavy. Full mail alone can weigh 20 to 30 kilos, distributed unevenly. It pulls at your shoulders, rubs raw against your thighs, and stiffens your spine like an iron rod. If you're wearing a breastplate, it's even worse. You bend, like a marionette with tangled strings. And it's not just heavy, it's hot. You sweat buckets into the padded gambeson underneath, which then acts like a damp sponge, trapping heat and regret. By noon, you feel like roast pork inside a burlap sack. Medieval combat was rarely fought under ideal weather. Imagine clanking into battle under a blazing sun with no sunscreen, no electrolyte drinks, just salt-crusted cheeks and mild hallucinations. Here's your first reality check. Armor didn't make you invincible. Sure, it helped against slashes and glancing blows, but a well-placed spear or mace could break bones through the metal. And speaking of maces, they existed specifically to crush armored knights. If you ever hear the sickening thunk of iron meeting iron followed by a scream, you'll know exactly what just happened. Historians still argue whether full armor made you more vulnerable to drowning. There are accounts of soldiers falling into rivers and never surfacing metal, being not the most buoyant fashion choice. You tread carefully around bridges, just in case. And don't think you can remove your armor easily. That requires time, privacy, and someone not actively trying to stab you. More often than not, you just learn to sleep in it, which means you also learn to live with fleas, lice, and whatever fungal horror is developing beneath your shoulder plates. Your body is its own petri dish. And helmets, let's not forget the joy of medieval headwear. The bassinet is a popular option, especially with a visor that can be raised or lowered. Sounds great until you realize it fogs up, limits peripheral vision, and echoes your own breathing like you're stuck inside a church bell. You lose track of your friends mid-battle because your ears are filled with the sound of yourself gasping. Still, armor has its perks. Some men learn to fall flat and play dead during skirmishes, hoping the enemy would pass them by. Others would wedge themselves between bodies, using the weight of corpses to shield against arrows. Not heroic, but smart. Quirky tidbit time. Some knights commissioned armor with engraved prayers, or saints etched on the inside. Others carried relics, a splinter of a saint's bone, a scrap of cloth from a holy shrine tucked into their tunics, believing divine protection might shield them better than steel. Whether it worked, well, let's just say battlefield survival statistics weren't exactly uplifting. Maintenance was its own nightmare. Your mail rusted if you so much as looked at it wrong. You'd spend hours rubbing it with sand, vinegar, and sometimes urine. Yes, urine. Because nothing says elite warrior like polishing your chainmail with bodily fluids. And for those wealthy enough to have a squire, lucky you. Your squire spends half his life carrying your gear and the other half muttering curses under his breath while scrubbing armored joints with pig fat. If you're not wealthy, you do it yourself. Badly. One historical fact. Most folks don't realize. Plate armor evolved, not to weigh you down, but to improve mobility. By the 15th century, a well-crafted suit of plate armor could allow a knight to run, mount a horse, even do jumping jacks if he wanted to waste his energy like that. The problem? You aren't wearing that kind of armor. You're wearing recycled misery from 3 campaigns ago. And let's not forget the psychological weight. Once you're in armor, you're a walking target. You clink and clatter like a wind chime with anger issues. Every archer from here to the horizon can see you. You might as well wave a flag that says, "Here, I am test your blade." But despite all this, despite the bruises, the stench, the chafing you feel, a little proud. Ridiculous maybe, but true. You catch your reflection in a puddle mud splashed, dented, leaking from the armpits and think, I look like someone who might survive a little longer than expected. Your comrade beside you taps his helmet with a knuckle. Think we'll see action today? He asks. You shrugged. You hope not, but also kind of. Because every hour in this armor is agony. But it's also a strange kind of armor for the soul. You feel less like a peasant and more like someone who might be remembered. And if that's not enough to justify 30 kilos of clanking iron and permanent shoulder cramps, well, it's better than returning home with nothing but dirt under your nails. You're still not at the battlefield. Not even close. Turns out war isn't just clashing swords and dramatic music hits, mostly walking. Long, endless, blister-inducing walking. You trudge mile after mile through terrain that seems designed by someone who hated feet. Cobblestone if you're lucky. Muddy roads if you're not. And straight-up swamp if your luck's the same as yesterday's soup. Thin and suspicious. No one told you the hardest part of war would be getting there. You march beside dozens, maybe hundreds, of others. Some moan, some joke, a few sing. Most just stare at the ground, like it insulted their mother. You all stink. The guy ahead of you has been flatulent since sunrise. The one behind you keeps humming an off-key tune about goats. And your armor, as usual, is doing its best to saw your shoulders clean off. Rations are handed out before the march. But they're barely food. A strip of dried meat that may or may not be squirrel. Bread that could double as a weapon. You chew slowly, not for savoring, just to make your jaw believe this is edible. Water comes from rivers or streams you pass, and someone claims upstream there's a dead cow. You drink anyway. Historians still argue whether soldiers on the move were better off than those in camp. On one hand, there's less disease moving, keeps the air fresher. On the other hand, you get blisters, pulled muscles, and sometimes marching off a cliff because your captain misread a goat trail. You pass through tiny villages, some friendly, some frightened, some abandoned. People peek through shutters, clutching their children like talismans. Soldiers have a reputation, and not a good one. A few villagers offer food in exchange for protection. Others hide their goods, hide their sons, and pray you move on. You're not a hero. You're a threat that hasn't struck yet. Your boots are giving up. One heel's flapping like a fish. You consider wrapping cloth around your feet, but you've got only one spare tunic, and you're not ready to sacrifice it yet. You look down and realize you've stepped in something again. It's best not to investigate what. And always, there's the smell. Imagine a blend of wet leather, human sweat, horse manure, and that one guy who brought cheese from home. You try breathing through your mouth, but then the dust kicks in, and your tongue tastes like gravel. You're exhausted by midday. You slump beside a tree when the column halts. You try to nap, but a fly is determined to burrow into your ear canal. Your eyes are half closed when someone mentions wolves. Apparently, a patrol lost a few men last week, and all they found were bones and a blood-stained helmet. Might have been wolves, the man says, or deserters, or something worse. You stop trying to nap, but marching isn't all misery. Sometimes, a strange camaraderie forms. The man who shared half his bread, the woman archer who told a joke filthy enough to make a priest blush, the veteran missing 3 fingers who taught you how to wrap your toes in wool to keep them from falling off. Quirky fact, in some regions, soldiers would mark each mile by singing lewd parodies of church hymns. It kept the rhythm and morale slightly above despair. One particularly popular chorus rhymed pilgrimage with sausage, and you'll never hear sacred music the same way again. You pass burned-out fields and trampled gardens. A scarecrow leans crookedly, missing its head. You wonder if someone used it for target practice or if a hungry soldier took its straw-stuffed shirt for warmth. War leaves strange fingerprints on the land. Some days, there's rain, not the gentle mist that poets write about. No, this is medieval rain carrying sheets of cold water that soak through your gambeson and fill your boots. Your clothes cling to you like wet bark. You shiver, teeth chattering, and trudge onward. Your feet slosh with every step. You haven't been dry in 3 days, and yet, you keep walking. Why? Maybe because there's nowhere else to go. Maybe because stopping means punishment or worse. One man tried to desert last week. They caught him. No one talks about what happened. But the spot where he was tied to the tree is still stained red. Marching also has its patterns. Each morning, the camp stirs to the groans of stiff joints and barking dogs. By midday, the column stretches long across the countryside, shimmering in heat or trudging through fog. Evenings bring a collapse literally. You collapse, armor and all, into whatever patch of earth isn't already claimed. And if you're lucky, you sleep for an hour before the coughing, fighting, and night watch shouting wake you up. Historical tidbit: some medieval armies were followed by merchants and families. They'd set up impromptu markets near marching routes, selling everything, from fresh bread to dice carved from bones. It was part economy, part community, though not without its own brawls and bad wine. One evening, as the sun bleeds orange across the sky, you overhear your captain talking. He says the enemy is still days away. More marching, more waiting. Your heart sinks, and your legs feel hollow. Someone mutters about turning around, but no one listens. You're all too tired to mutiny. You sit by a campfire, chewing a stick of something you hope is meat, staring at the stars. They seem cruelly serene. Above all this sweat and fear and blistered flesh, the sky doesn't care. It never did. Still, you press your hands to the earth. You're filthy, sore, and half-starved, but alive, for now, and that's enough. You smell the siege long before you see it. The air hits you like a rancid, wet, and clinging to the inside of your throat. It's the smell of rotting meat, human waste, horses that haven't been brushed in weeks, and fear, not your fear. This time, there's the ones behind the walls. You've arrived at a fortress under lockdown, and nobody's getting out without a very unpleasant negotiation. You line up outside the city. Just one ragged thread in the fraying blanket of soldiers, tents, carts, and stink that stretches around the stronghold. This is siege life, and whether you're inside or outside the walls, the goal is simple: outlast the other guy. There's no grand charge, no dramatic flag waving at the gates. You mostly wait, and starve. Food runs out quickly on both sides. Inside, they're boiling horses, rats, leather belts, nothing chewable. Outside, your rations are stale, wormy, and already being stolen by enterprising supply clerks. You gnaw on a turnip and try not to think about the fact that it's the highlight of your week. Siege warfare is psychological. You stare at them, they stare at you, sometimes for weeks. Occasionally someone yells an insult or fires an arrow just to feel alive. You sleep in shifts and wake to drumbeats or rumors. They're down to eating dogs, someone says. They've started drinking urine, whispers another. You pretend not to hear your own stomach grumble in sympathy. Historians still argue whether siege warfare was more humane than pitched battle. On paper, fewer died in direct combat, but starvation, disease, and desperation often turned it into a slow-motion horror story, especially when the catapults came out. Yes, siege engines, trebuchets, ballistae battering rams, and other delightfully medieval expressions of violent creativity. The most infamous siege trick: lobbing plague-ridden corpses over the walls. Yes, really. Flinging the dead as biological warfare. You spend one memorable afternoon helping hoist a bloated cow carcass into a counterweight-powered trebuchet, only to watch it arc through the air, trailing entrails like streamers. It splats somewhere near the market square. You don't laugh. No one laughs. Quirky siege detail. Some defenders hung religious icons on the walls, hoping to ward off enemy curses. One desperate garrison once paraded their women across the ramparts, dressed as soldiers, to fake a larger defense force. It worked briefly. You build trenches, dig latrines, patch tents. Then you dig again, you haul stones, you fill barrels. You stay busy, because if you stop moving, you'll start noticing the bodies piling up. Disease spreads like spilled ink. Typhus, dysentery, something called camp fever. No one explains what it is. You just start noticing fewer people at roll call. The medics, if you can call them that, are overwhelmed. A man with a cross around his neck and blood on his hands saws off a rotting leg, while 3 others hold the victim down. There's no anesthesia, just liquor and screaming. You quietly vow never to get injured. The vow lasts until someone accidentally hits you with a spade during latrine duty. One night, the enemy tries a sortie, a desperate charge through the gate, hoping to break the siege. They're starving, outnumbered, half-mat. They rush at your camp with knives, pitchforks, even furniture. Legs. You scramble out of your blanket and into your helmet, grabbing your weapon with hands still sticky from stale meat. It's chaos, screaming, mud, fire. Someone's torch ignites a cart, and the blaze lights up the night like it's Judgment Day. You swing wildly, not knowing if you're hitting friend or foe. When it's over, you're panting, splattered with things you hope are just mud. The next morning, a head is mounted on a pike outside their gates. You don't look too closely. You don't want to know if it's the man who begged for water 2 nights ago. And then there's the waiting again, always. The waiting. Days blur. Weeks maybe. You forget what normal smells like. You forget what bread tastes like. You forget how your own voice sounds without shouting over wind and groaning wood. And just when you think the walls will never fall, there's a crack, a breach. The engineers have been tunneling beneath the defenses, using pickaxes and prayers to undermine the stonework. One wall collapses with a groan like a dying giant. Dust clouds rise, horns blow. Someone screams charge, and suddenly, you're moving. You don't want to. Your legs say no. But the tide of men sweeps you forward like a river in flood. You rush toward the gap, shield raised, eyes wide, heart pounding like it's trying to break free of your ribcage. The defenders meet you with arrows and boiling oil. The smell of cooked flesh nearly topples you. You climb over rubble and corpses and swing at anything moving. You step on a dismembered hand. You slip in blood. You press forward. There is no formation, no strategy, just madness. Stone streets become slaughterhouses. Fires leap from thatched roofs. Women scream. Children hide. Men fight like demons. You lose your weapon and grab another from a fallen man. You stab someone through the chest, and they don't fall right away. When the gates are thrown open, it's over, but it's not over. The looting begins. Your captain gives the nod. Take what you can, he says. You don't want to, but everyone else is already inside homes, ripping linens, pouring wine, grabbing jewelry. You take bread, just bread. You eat it in a half-collapsed courtyard, while someone sets fire to a nearby chapel, and then quiet. Not peace, not really, just quiet. Later, you'll help bury the dead, or not. Sometimes they just lie there. Crows feast, dogs sniff, time forgets. You lie down outside the burning city, armor still on, sword by your side. You feel nothing, not pride, not joy, just numbness. And relief that for now it's over. There's no bugle, no drum roll, no tidy announcement that the battle's about to begin. It just happens. One moment, you're dozing beside a pile of kindling, pretending it's a mattress. The next, there's movement scouts, shouting commanders. Pacing, horses stamping. The air smells charged, like wet metal and damp leather. You lace your boots tighter, grip your spear with sweaty palms, try not to throw up. Then the horns sound. Low, mournful things that make your ribs vibrate. And you know this is it. You are marching straight into a full-scale medieval battle, and it's not glorious. It's not organized. It's not even particularly fast. The advance is like watching a nightmare unfold in slow motion. You move forward in a rough line more or less. Your unit commander is shouting something about keeping formation, but it's hard to hear over the thousand other noises. Horses neighing, men praying, boots thudding on trampled grass. You scan the horizon. You see them too. The other side. A line of shapes. Flags you don't recognize. Armor glinting. It hits you that they're also just people. Hungry, tired, terrified people. Just like you. And then the archers fire. You hear it first, sharp rush like wind through pine needles. Then a sound you'll never forget. Arrows punching into flesh, into wood, into dirt. The man 2 steps to your left jerks and crumples with a thud. You don't have time to check on him. The next volley's already in the air. Historians still argue whether longbowmen were truly battle changers, or simply a well-marketed English fantasy. But you believe in them, completely. You believe in their ability to ruin your day from 200 paces away. You raise your shield. Not because you're brave, because your body won't let you do anything else. The instinct to duck, to hide, to not die, overrides everything. You crouch, you move, you keep moving forward. The lines collide. It's not like in the stories. No tidy duels. No dancing blades. Just chaos. You slam into another man hard. You both grunt, stagger, and try to kill each other in a tangle of elbows, grunts, and metal edges. It's messy. Your spear catches on something and snaps. You don't even know what. You grab a sword from someone's belt, anyone's and swing without skill or grace. You don't aim, you react. Your world shrinks to a tunnel of swinging arms, cracking bones, and mud. Always the mud. Someone trips, someone screams, someone runs. You lose track of everything, of time, of place, of who's winning. You don't even remember getting that cut on your forearm, or the bruise swelling behind your ear. You're a storm of instinct, blocking, swinging, ducking, pushing. You scream too, because everyone's screaming, and it feels like the only thing keeping your lungs from bursting. And the noise, it's deafening. Armor clashing, hooves pounding, commands shouted and ignored, men dying in stereo. And always beneath it, the low hum of thousands of people trying to stay alive. Someone grabs your shoulder. You spin, blade raised. It's your captain, left flank. He yells, pointing. You nod, though you have no idea what flank you're on anymore. Still, you go that way. You stumble over a corpseon pale, wearing a tunic you recognize. You don't stop. You can't. Quirky fact. Some soldiers tied bells to their armor, not for flair, but so comrades could hear them moving in the din. You wonder if the jingling you hear nearby means help, or just a very confident lunatic. And the smells, blood, sweat, manure, biolius, that's vomit. Yours. You don't remember vomiting, but there it is, splattered across your chest plate. It's strangely warm. You see horses now. Big, snorting war horses, with eyes wide and mouths frothing. Knights atop them swing swords with terrifying efficiency. You duck just in time as a hoof narrowly misses your skull. Someone's trampled. You hear the crunch. You don't look back. Historians still debate the exact role of cavalry. Some say they turned the tide, others that they arrived too late to matter. All you know is, if a horse comes at you, you move. Fast. Eventually, the line breaks yours, or theirs. You're not sure. Bodies scatter. A trumpet blasts from somewhere. Someone shouts retreat, or maybe charge. Hard to tell. Either way, people start running. You run too. Toward what? Doesn't matter. Away from the worst of it. You scramble past fallen helmets, broken shields, a man crying for his mother in a puddle of his own blood. You finally drop to your knees behind a fallen cart. You're gasping, shaking, spattered with everything. Your sword arm is numb. Your knees are jelly. Your soul feels misplaced. You're alive. That's the shocking part. And then you laugh, because it's absurd. Because that's the only sound you can make. A ragged, dry-throated chuckle that earns you a few sideways looks from other survivors. One of them has blood leaking from his ear. Another is missing a boot. No one speaks. Later, when the sun's low and the crows come circling, the cleanup begins. You're expected to help. Move bodies, check the wounded, loot the dead. You find a man still breathing. He grabs your wrist and whispers something you don't understand before dying with his eyes wide open. You close them, then move on. You sit at the edge of the battlefield. The sky is gold, the grass stained black. A knight's helmet glints like a fallen moon. You see someone tending to a wound, using a strip of a saint's banner. The irony is not lost on you. You made it through one battle, barely. And the worst part, they say the real war starts tomorrow. You wake up sore in places you didn't know could be sore. The battle's over, but your body hasn't gotten the message. Every bruise sings its own little hymn of pain, and your armor has practically fused to your skin with dried blood and sweat. You try to stand but have to roll sideways first, like a very confused turtle just, to get your knees under you. Today's job: get acquainted with your medieval toolbox of pain, the weapons. The war isn't won with broad strokes and fantasy blades. Forget the shining swords and polished axes shown in paintings. What you get hand, what most people get are tools of killing that are practical, ugly, and often improvised. Let's start with your favorite, the spear. It's cheap, deadly, and doesn't require finesse. Just stick the pointy end into whatever's charging at you and pray it doesn't hit back. Spears range from short jabbing sticks to long pikes taller than you. Great for keeping enemies at a distance and also excellent at tripping your own comrades if you're not careful. Then there's the sword, romanticized endlessly, but here's a brutal truth. Most of the time, swords were backup weapons. Expensive, flashy, symbolic, and if you're a common soldier, you probably looted yours off a corpse. It's more for close quarters panic than elegant duels. You don't slice. You bash, wedge, pry. It's like trying to force open a sardine tin made of screaming humans. You've seen maces now. Oh yes, no blade. Just a solid lump of metal designed to crush. Against plate armor, they're terrifying. Someone swings one at you, and even if they don't break bone, your insides jiggle in ways nature never intended. Same goes for Warhammer's part. Spike, part bludgeon, all misery. And axes. Not your gentle wood-splitting kind. These are designed to split helmets, shields, and sometimes friendships. The hooked ones are the worst. They catch onto armor and rip it away. You saw a man get yanked off his horse like a sack of wheat. Historians still argue whether polearms were the most effective weapon on the field. Halberds, glaives, billhooks, they're like a farmer's angry daydream turned real. Imagine a spear, an axe, and a can opener had a violent baby. Now give that to an underfed conscript with no depth perception and stand back. Quirky fact, some armies issued weapons with names, not romantic ones like Excalibur, more practical ones like Dogbiter or Knee Snapper. Soldiers believed naming a weapon gave it a soul, or at least made dying by it slightly less anonymous. And then there are the big boys. Siege weapons. You're not operating them, but you hear them, feel them. The groaning counterweights of trebuchets, the sharp thwack of a ballista letting loose, the slow roll of a battering ram being pushed up to a city gate with a dozen men underneath. These aren't weapons you carry. These are weapons that break cities in half. Oh, and crossbows. Marvels of tension and timing. You crank one slowly, trying not to pinch your fingers. Load a bolt, aim, fire. Wait 30 seconds to do it all again. Yes, it's slow, but when a bolt drives straight through a man's chest and pins him to a wall, speed suddenly seems less important. You pass a pile of discarded weapons on the edge of the field. Some broken, some still bloodied. A shovel lies next to a sword. You pick them both up, and honestly can't tell which one you trust more. In fact, many soldiers prefer clubs and cudgels. No edge to dull, no splinters. Just raw, swinging force. A knight walks past you, his longsword sheathed, casually flipping a dagger in one hand. That's another thing you learn to fear: the small blades. The hidden ones. The kind that end a life in a whispered second, not a crashing blow. You spend part of the day sharpening blades. It's oddly soothing, rhythmic. Spark, scrape, turn, repeat. You think about how many of these weapons have drawn blood, how many lives have been ended mid-swing. It gives you a chill but also a strange calm, like you're part of a ritual, older. Then King's Dot, your captain, hands you a morning star. It's a stick with a spiked ball on the end. Good for helmets, he says, deadpan. You swing it a few times. It's heavy, unwieldy. You already hate it. But he shrugs and walks off. You strap it to your side anyway. Later, you gather around a campfire, each soldier inspecting their preferred instrument of death. Some clean lovingly, almost tenderly, like it's a beloved pet. Others barely glance at theirs, muttering, "It's just a tool." One man admits he still doesn't know what his weapon is called. "I hit things. They stop moving." That's good enough. Quirky battlefield superstition. Some soldiers swore that a blade sharpened during a storm was more blood-hungry. Others refused to let anyone else touch their weapon before battle. Bad luck, they said. You don't believe it, but you still eye your own sword warily when someone else picks it up. And then there are the shields. You think they're for defense until you see someone use theirs like a battering ram, smashing skulls with the rim. Painted with crude symbols, saints, family crests, some scratched out, some redone. Yours, just plain wood, with dents shaped like other people's. Regrets at night. You sit beside your weapon like it's part of you. Maybe it is now. The blade's nicked, the handle's wrapped in filthy linen. But it's kept you alive this long. And in this world, that's enough to earn a little respect. You look at your hands, calloused, bruised, blistered. You flex your fingers. You wonder what they'd feel like holding something else. A plow, a child's hand, a letter from home. But for now, they hold steel. And tomorrow, they'll hold it again. You'd think the fighting was the worst part. It's not. The worst part is what happens after the part, where someone has to deal with all the broken bodies. You hobble into the makeshift medic tent with a gash across your forearm. Still trickling. Blood. The tent smells like old cheese and regret. There's straw on the floor, flies in the air, and a bucket in the corner that you really hope isn't for drinking water. You sit on a bench that's not quite a bench, creaks ominously, and wait your turn behind a guy with half an ear, and another, whose leg looks like it's trying to escape. Welcome to medieval medicine. Your doctor isn't actually a doctor. He's a barber surgeon. And yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. He cuts hair. He cuts flesh. He probably does both, with the same knife. He approaches with the confidence of a man who's done this 1,000 times, then the hygiene of someone who's never heard of soap. He doesn't ask if you're okay. He doesn't offer comfort. He just pokes at your arm, grunts, and reaches for a long, rusty needle. You stop breathing. Historians still argue whether barber surgeons were genuinely helpful, or just hastened the dying process with flair. Some had skill, others had enthusiasm. A rare few had both. You pray yours is at least sober. He sews the gash closed with black thread. It looks suspiciously like it was just pulled from a tunic. There's no anesthetic, no clean towels. You clench your jaw and try to stare at a knot in the ceiling until the stars in your eyes stop spinning. Then comes the leech. Oh yes. He slaps one right onto your wrist to balance your humors. Apparently your blood is too hot. You want to argue, but decide it's not worth it with a blood-sucking slug attached to your arm. Quirky fact. Some medieval physicians genuinely believed illnesses were caused by planetary misalignment. If Mars and Saturn were beefing, you might get a fever. No amount of herbal tea could fix bad astrology. You glance around the tent. A man on a straw pallet is murmuring something about crows. Another is missing a foot. One guy's just lying completely still, and no one's sure if he's asleep or dead. You make eye contact with a soldier who has a spearhead still embedded in his thigh. He raises his eyebrows at you like rough day. You nod back. Wounds fester quickly. Infection sets in faster than you'd expect. You're lucky your gash is clean, relatively speaking. But you've seen what happens when someone waits too long. Redness, fever, swelling like dough left in the sun. The barber surgeon slices open the swelling and drains it with a grimace. No gloves, no antiseptic, just confidence. And if that fails, amputation. You witness one up close. A young man with a gangrenous hand. He's held down by 3 others, while the surgeon heats a blade over flame. The room stinks of burning hair and fear. The man screams so loud that birds lift from trees outside. When it's over, he's unconscious or possibly just retreated deep into his own mind. They pour wine on the stump. You don't know if it's for cleaning or celebration. Historians still debate the survival rate of battlefield amputations. Some sources claim success rates around 50%. The wound was clean, and the weather mild, and the stars aligned, and nobody sneezed. You're given a poultice made from mashed herbs and ... something unidentifiable. It's warm. That's not necessarily a good sign. Still, it's bound to your arm with linen strips that look like they were once somebody's underpants. You limp out of the tent and sit in the sun. Fresh air helps. So does distance from the smell of cauterized flesh. You watch others wander out, blinking and pale. There's a camaraderie among the wounded. You don't say much. Just nods, quiet grunts, and the occasional wry chuckle when someone farts unexpectedly. Quirky practice. Some soldiers carried plague charms made from bone, herbs, and bits of scripture. Others tied garlic around their necks, believing it warded off sickness. Your bunkmate swears by soaking his socks in vinegar. It hasn't helped, but his feet do smell like salad. You take inventory of your body. The arm is bandaged. Your ribs ache. Your left foot feels like someone tried to bake it. But nothing's broken. Nothing's oozing green. You've seen worse. You were worse yesterday. Someone offers you a sip from a flask. You don't ask what's in it, you just drink. It burns like fire and tastes like regret, but you feel a little better. You lean back and stare at the sky. Above all this filth and fever and panic, the clouds drift calmly. You wonder what the sky looks like from your village. If your sister's still tending the goats. If your father has repaired the fence. If they've noticed you're missing or if war has already taken someone else. The next day, the wound throbs, but it's sealed. For now, you change the bandage yourself this time. You've learned not to trust the clean rag bin. You carry the scar proudly. Not because it's heroic, but because it's proof. Proof you fought. Proof you survived. Proof that even in a world where medicine is half guesswork and half folklore, you somehow made it through. You might think that after surviving a battle, enduring a wound, and narrowly avoiding gangrene, you've earned a little rest. But rest, in medieval warfare, is a bit of a myth. You don't just kick back with a roasted chicken and a tankard of ale while a bard serenades you. No, your reward for survival is camp duty. Ah, yes, welcome to the glamorous, romantic world of hauling buckets, patching tents, and cleaning up after horses that apparently ate something deeply upsetting. Your camp sprawls like a wounded beast, sagging, smoke rising, carts stuck in mud. You wake before dawn to the sound of someone coughing hard enough to shake the trees. That's normal now. You don't even flinch. Just pull on your damp boots and go fetch water. The camp has rules, not written, of course, but you learn them. Quickly, don't step too close to the officer's fire. Don't drink from the wrong barrel, unless you like your ale with a hint of dysentery. Don't touch anything that smells like it might still be alive. You help build a trench. Not for battle, just so rain doesn't flood the latrines again. You shuffle slowly, rhythmically. Your blisters have blisters. A man next to you jokes about digging his way home. You both laugh. Neither of you stops digging. One of your most important tasks is firewood. Without it, the camp turns cold and dangerous. You wander into the forest with a dull axe, and a prayer that no ambushers are lurking behind the trees. You return with branches, twigs, and a possible spider colony in your sleeve. No one thanks you. They just take the wood. Historians still argue whether medieval camps were better organized under noble-led armies or mercenary companies. Nobles brought money and cooks. Mercenaries brought chaos and dice games. Your camp, a little of both. There's a man selling meat pies of questionable origin. and another who's been running a thriving betting ring on who will contract lice next. Speaking of lice, you have them. Everyone does. You scratch until your scalp bleeds. Your shirt moves when you set it down. Some men shave their heads completely, hoping to outsmart the bugs. It only half works. You help set up the commander's tent. It's twice the size of yours, with canvas clean enough to make you suspicious. He has an actual cot, a silver goblet, a chest that probably holds fine wine and cheese while the rest of you argue over stale beans. Someone mentions this is his first campaign. You try not to be bitter, but not all officers are cowards. There's a grizzled sergeant with a beard like a bird's nest and eyes that haven't blinked in 20 years. He fights, bleeds, and digs like the rest of you. You'd follow him into hell, mostly because he already looks like he's from there. You eat in shifts. The mess area smells like a barn exploded. You line up for stew muesli root vegetables and mystery meat. You pretend it's rabbit. You close your eyes when you chew. Someone offers salt and instantly becomes the most popular man in camp. Quirky detail. Some camps had singing stones, flat rocks placed near the fire, where soldiers would sit and take turns telling stories or bawdy songs, a way to blow off steam without violence. Your camp has something similar, though it mostly devolves into arguments about who stole whose boots. Nights in camp are restless. The wind howls, horses snort, a dog barks endlessly. You wrap yourself in your cloak and try to sleep, but your neighbor snores like he's being murdered in slow motion. You poke him once, then again. He doesn't stop. You consider smothering him with a sock, but decide it's not worth the paperwork. Historians still debate the role of camp followers: women, children, traders, cooks, even entertainers who lived on the fringes of the army. They weren't just background noise. They were essential. One woman in your camp runs a stitching service for torn tunics and also brews some kind of herbal potion that doubles as a laxative and love charm. Results vary. Then there's waste management. Oh yes, you drew latrine duty this week. You dig holes, cover old ones, and carry buckets. You stop caring about dignity around the same time your nose stops registering smell. You sing to distract yourself. It doesn't help. Sometimes there are surprise inspections. A knight in polished armor walks through the camp, wrinkling his nose and commenting on the state of discipline. He points at your muddy boots and raises an eyebrow. You consider throwing your bucket at him, but again paperwork. You barter, constantly. A clean bandage for a whetstone, dried fruit for beeswax, a half-rotten onion for something that might be tobacco. There's a man who's managed to acquire actual honey, and no one knows how. He guards it like treasure. You spend one afternoon carving a little figure from wood, just something to do with your hands. A crude soldier. You give it a helmet, then a sword. You don't name it, but you carry it in your pocket for the rest of the campaign. One morning, a soldier doesn't wake up. No wounds, no cries, just gone. They say it happens too tired, too cold, too much. You help dig a shallow grave. No ceremony, just earth, stone, silence. That night someone passes around a flask of something that smells like tree sap and rage. You drink. You cough. You laugh until your stomach hurts. Camp life is boring, disgusting, necessary. It's the glue between battles, the waiting room of war. And as awful as it is, you begin to understand something important. Surviving here is just as hard as surviving out there. You wake two bells, not church bells, not alarm bells. These are quieter, almost pleasant, someone tinkering with armor fittings. Or maybe the little brass charms tied to a commander's horse. Either way, it's a better sound than screaming or marching. For once, the camp isn't exploding into chaos. It's preparing for parade day. You wouldn't believe it if you weren't here. War has a performance side. Even in the mud-soaked, lice-infested slog of medieval campaigns, there are moments where everyone dusts off the dirt, polishes their gear, and pretends they're part of something glorious. Today is one of those days. You scrub your armor until your arms ache. It's not even your armor. Technically used to belong to someone named Jorvik, judging by the initials etched inside the collar. Jorvik is probably dead, but you thank him anyway, because his chest plate mostly fits and doesn't smell like pickled feet. The commanders have ordered a formal display, a review, a lineup. Why? Historians still argue whether these ceremonial days were about morale, intimidation, or simply giving nobles an excuse to show off their fancy feathered helmets. Your guess, all three. You line up with your unit in rows that almost look straight almost. Your captain barks orders, while simultaneously adjusting his own cloak to look casual and dignified. You're standing between a man who hasn't washed since Easter and a woman who's been sharpening her halberd so obsessively you're afraid she might test it on you. A herald rides out with a trumpet. It's dented, and he's clearly improvising the notes, but he plays it like he's opening the gates of heaven. Then come the flags, bright, colorful, swaying above a forest of spears. They flutter in the breeze like someone remembered this is supposed to inspire pride, not nausea, and then the nobles arrive. They clink and gleam like walking treasure chests. Fine fabrics, embroidery, gold thread, inlaid armor that's more decoration than defense. Their horses are braided, their swords oiled, their helmets feathered like confused birds of paradise. You try not to roll your eyes. Quirky fact, some nobles had their coats of arms sewn into their undergarments, just in case. Because nothing says honor like flashing your lineage while dying in your underwear. One of the dukes gives a speech. You zone out after the first valiant endeavor. His voice rises and falls like a tired preacher on a rainy Sunday. He talks of duty, sacrifice, the glory of your sovereign. You shift your weight. Your foot's asleep. The soldier beside you sneezes directly onto his breastplate. No one flinches. Eventually you're dismissed, but not to rest. No, now it's drill time. That's right. After real battle and real bloodshed, you're expected to fake it all again for practice. Marching in formation. Turning on command. Raising shields like it's choreographed theater. You shuffle forward. Raise your weapon. Pivot. Repeat. A knight on a platform shouts corrections like he's leading a particularly violent dance class. You're tired, hungry, mildly resentful. But you move. Historians still debate how much actual training medieval soldiers received. Some armies drilled regularly, especially the well-funded ones. Others relied on brute strength, instinct, and panic. You suspect your unit is somewhere between semi-disciplined and chaotic good. Then comes the mock skirmish. It's meant to simulate battle without causing injury. Naturally, within minutes, someone gets a broken nose, someone else breaks formation to chase a dropped glove, and you somehow end up facing the wrong direction, holding a spear that now looks more like a bent fork. The officers applaud anyway. Good show, one says, not noticing the blood dribbling from a squire's eyebrow. Later, after parade and drill and motivational shouting, you're allowed to rest. Sort of. You're sent to help construct new siege ladders for the next offensive. This involves hauling timber, hammering nails, and praying you're not the one asked to carry it under enemy fire next week. At dusk, the atmosphere softens. Fires crackle. Bread is passed around. Someone even found a lute. It's missing a string. But that doesn't stop a tired soldier from plucking out a tune that sounds vaguely like a lullaby played by a drunken uncle. You sit back, lean on a barrel, and watch the stars flicker into view. Your muscles ache in that strange, satisfying Wather kind of ache that says, you didn't die today. That's enough. You chat with the woman who sharpened her halberd. She tells you she used to be a cook. Best stew in 3 counties, she says, half smiling. You believe her. A few tents over, someone's telling a ghost story about a headless knight who haunts battlefields looking for his horse. You can't hear all the details, but the laughter carries. Laughter always carries. Even here and then. There's the younger recruit, barely 16, beard still in negotiations with his chin. He asks you what battle's like. You pause, try to find words that aren't cruel or false. You finally say, loud. He nods solemnly, as if that one word explained everything. Maybe it does. Quirky superstition of the day. Some soldiers carry bits of battlefield debris in their pockets for luck. a splinter from a siege ladder, a bent arrowhead. You glance at your own pouch. Inside is the carved wooden figure you made in camp. You don't believe in luck, but you still keep it. Night falls fully. The stars blink on, indifferent, as always. Someone snores. Someone prays. Someone sings an off-key lullaby in a language you don't understand. The pageantry of war fades back into the reality of it. Dirt, fatigue, and fragile peace. But tonight, there's no fighting, just rest, a fire, maybe even a dream. And tomorrow, well, probably more yelling. The rain comes without warning. 1 minute, you're squatting near a campfire, trying to dry your socks over the embers. And the next, the heavens open like a leaking cauldron. Cold, relentless, sideways rain, and it doesn't stop. Not that day, not the next, not the day after that. Welcome to the true enemy of the medieval soldier, the weather. You scramble to cover your gear. Your tent collapses within the first hour, its ropes slipping in the muck like they've just given up. You sleep that night under your cloak, curled like a sad pastry in the mud, praying your boots don't float away while you doze by the next morning. The camp is a swamp. Everything you own is wet. Your pack, your tunic, your soul. Soldiers shuffle around wrapped in soaking furs and grim resignation. You try to warm your hands over a sputtering fire that smells like steamed boot leather. Historians still argue whether weather was the ultimate battlefield decider in medieval campaigns. Some battles were delayed, cancelled, or catastrophically botched because of a sudden storm or frost. You're starting to believe it's less about tactics and more about who has the drier socks. Mud becomes a serious hazard. It sucks in cartwheels, yanks boots off feet, and swallows entire shovels. One poor fellow sinks thigh-deep in it and needs 3 others to pull him out. When they finally free him, his trousers are gone. He doesn't even bother retrieving them, just wades away, pantsless and defeated. You help dig ditches to divert the water, supposedly, but it feels more like you're preparing for a duck pond. You're given a wooden spade that's more splinter than shovel. You pretend it's working while your fingers go numb. Quirky fact: medieval armies sometimes blamed prolonged bad weather on curses. Entire units carried charms to appease the clouds. One guy in your squad ties an onion to his belt and insists it keeps the storms at bay. It doesn't, but it makes him easy to smell in a crowd. You're issued a waxed cloak to keep dry. The wax has mostly worn off. It clings to you like a damp napkin. At some point, someone mentions trenchfoot, and you take your boots off to check. The smell nearly knocks you over. You decide to leave the mystery unsolved. Food spoils. Fast in the wet. Bread goes soggy. Salted meat becomes mush. You learn to appreciate soup, even if you can't identify its ingredients. One evening, someone finds mushrooms near the woods. The next morning, half the camp has either violently vomited or claims to have spoken with a ghost. You steer clear of foraging from then on. One evening, lightning strikes a tree barely 30 feet from your fire pit. It splits in half, with a crack like divine punishment. The cook screams. A horse bolts. Everyone ducks instinctively. You spend the rest of the night wide-eyed, whispering, "We're fine," like a charm. There are attempts to raise morale. Songs are sung poorly. Someone organizes a mud wrestling match. You don't participate, but you cheer anyway. Anything to feel something besides soggy. But the wet brings more than discomfort. It brings sickness. The coughing starts, then fevers. Soon, a whole row of tents becomes the sick corner. Blankets are soaked through. Patients shiver violently. Some don't. Wake up. You help carry a body to the edge of camp. No one has the energy to dig proper graves anymore. They're laid under wet canvas with a prayer and a sigh. Historians still debate how well medieval armies handled disease outbreaks. The reality, not well. Soap is rare. Clean water, rarer. You start drinking ale because it's safer than the runoff that passes for fresh spring. You try not to think about what's upstream. Still, there are moments of strange beauty. Mist curling through the trees like smoke. Rain tapping gently on a helmet. The silver sheen of wet armor catching. Dawn light. You see a boy feeding a soaked pigeon with breadcrumbs from his own pouch. He says it followed him from town. He's named it, sir, Beaky. And then, the marching orders come. You're moving again. Despite the muck, despite the weather, despite the fact that half the men can barely stand. You pack up in silence. No one cheers, no one complains. You just move. Marching through wet terrain is slow and maddening. Your cart breaks a wheel. You help push it for an hour through sludge thick, enough to be considered soup. Your feet squelch with every step. The rain doesn't stop. At some point, your companion mutters, "Is this still France, or did we march into a cursed lake?" You don't answer. You're too busy pulling leeches off your ankle. Quirky superstition. Soldiers believed that touching a stone struck by lightning would protect them from future storms. You see a man kiss one while whispering something about his grandmother. You make a mental note to avoid sitting next to him at dinner. That night, you camp on higher ground. It's still wet, still cold, but at least your blanket isn't floating. You wring out your cloak, eat something resembling a bean, try to sleep, while your tent flaps and the wind howls like it's telling ghost stories. You dream of warmth, of dry socks, a fire that doesn't smell like damp rat. Tomorrow may be clearer, or not, but you'll march anyway, because that's war. The sun finally returns like a long-lost relative, bright, smug, and a little too enthusiastic. It dries the mud but brings no real relief. Now, instead of wet misery, you're roasting inside your armor like a meat pie in a traveling baker's cart. You miss the rain, just a little. You're told the army's approaching a town. Not a big one, just a walled hamlet with a few hundred people. A decent well, and hopefully a barn that hasn't already been turned into firewood. You're not attacking, not this time. You're requisitioning.r is requisitioning, the polite term for taking things from frightened peasants and pretending it's legal because you're wearing a tabard with someone else's crest. The officers give speeches about discipline, restraint, honor. But you know how this works. You've seen it before. When you arrive, the gates are already open. The villagers have no illusions about resisting. A delegation meets your captain. They speak in strained voices, offering bread, ale, salted pork, anything, to make the soldiers move on quickly and peacefully. Your captain nods solemnly and promises that order will be maintained. Everyone pretends to believe him. Historians still argue whether these town visits were acts of controlled supply or thinly veiled pillaging. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in the mud. You're sent to collect food. You knock on doors with your helmet under your arm, trying to look non-threatening. It's not easy. You're covered in dried blood and sunburn, and your boots are still caked with last week's marsh. A woman answers. Middle-aged, sharp eyes, arms folded. She hands over a sack of turnips without a word. You nod. You leave. You try not to look at the small child peeking from behind her skirt. Not everyone's so cooperative. One man refuses to give up his chickens. He screams that he needs them for his children. Your comrade grabs two anyway. You hear the man sobbing as you walk away, feathers floating behind you like guilt on the breeze. You spend the afternoon helping to inventory what's been acquired. There's flour, wine, boots, tools, and one mysterious barrel no one opens. A boy asks if he can keep the cheese wheel he found. It's moldy. No one argues. There's also coin hidden in floorboards, buried in gardens. Some villagers give it up quickly. Others lie. You can't blame them. If you had 10 silver groats to your name, you'd probably bury them too. One soldier finds a stash behind a loose hearthstone and whoops like he's won the lottery. You wonder if he'll still be whooping when the captain demands his share. Quirky fact. Some medieval armies carried official receipts for requisitioned goods, signed by nobles or clerks. Peasants were told to keep them, as if anyone would later compensate them with interest and a smile. Most receipts were used as kindling. You're given a task outside the walls. Check the fields for anything edible. You wander among rows of wilted cabbage and parched wheat, occasionally yanking up a root vegetable with all the ceremony of robbing a grave. A scarecrow stares at you, slumped and faded, with a rusted pot for a head. You tip your helmet to it. Respect where it's due. Later, The blacksmith offers to repair your dagger in exchange for leaving his anvil alone. You accept. He works in silence. His hands are steady. You notice a burned scar curling up his forearm, probably from before the war came to his doorstep. Probably won't be the last dot back inside. Tensions rise. Someone's accused of looting a silver cup. Another soldier throws a punch. Your captain shouts. The villagers flinch. You step between two men before it turns into a full brawl. It's exhausting, this constant tightrope between survival and savagery. Historians still debate how often armies protected towns from rival forces versus looting them themselves. In practice, it depended on who gave the orders and who was watching. Today, your unit mostly behaves. Mostly at dusk, the villagers bring out music. A few fiddles, a drum, some cracked voices singing old songs about harvest and ghosts. It's awkward at first, then surprising. A child dances, a soldier claps. You find yourself smiling. Not because it's funny, because it's strange. Peace, even temporary, feels alien. You sit on a barrel, sharing bread with a toothless old man who used to fight when the king was still a boy. He tells you a story about a duel in a monastery. You pretend to listen. You're just glad to hear words that aren't shouted in anger. Night falls, and you sleep in a hayloft. It's warm. It smells like animals, but at least the hay's dry. You dream of your village, your mother's soup, your sister braiding straw into little crowns. You haven't written in weeks. Not that you could. No ink, no parchment, no idea where to send it. Quirky superstition. Many soldiers believed that if you slept in a stranger's barn, you had to leave a coin under the straw, or the house spirits would follow you. You don't have a coin. You leave a button instead. The next morning, the army is moving again. Orders barked, flags lifted, carts loaded. You catch a glimpse of the woman from before, the one with the turnips. She's watching from behind a fence, arms folded just like before. You meet her eyes. She doesn't wave. You don't either. And just like that, the town vanishes behind you. Another name on a map. Another place swallowed by the march of war. You wonder how long they'll remember your faces. You hope the answer is not long, because war always moves on. But the people it touches don't. The road turns harder now. Not physically, though. The gravel does feel like it's personally attacking your souls, but emotionally, the mood in the ranks shifts. Everyone senses it. Whispers, swirl, something big is coming. Not another raid. Not a simple skirmish. A siege. You arrive near the target city just after dawn, and its imposing tall stone walls. Solid wooden gates reinforced with iron, towers jutting into the sky like clenched fists. Defensive banners flap lazily from the ramparts, taunting your weary army with their brightness. Sieges aren't quick. You've heard stories, months-long stalemates, starvation, disease, surrender only after the last dog has been eaten. You eye the city and feel your stomach sink. This isn't going to be pleasant. First, the engineers arrive. Not elegant, soft-handed men with scrolls and ideas. These are burly, dirt-covered soldiers with rope burns on their palms and permanently scowling foreheads. They begin measuring distances, muttering about angles, digging ditches. You're handed a shovel before you even drop your pack. You help dig the first of what will be many siege lines, a trench that will supposedly offer protection from arrows. You doubt it. The soil is rocky, the sun hot, and your arms feel like they're made of wet linen. A man near you faints from heat. Another throws up from exertion. You just keep digging. Quirky fact: many medieval armies believed that if a mole or badger was spotted during trench digging, it was a sign the siege would fail. Someone spots a beetle. You declare it neutral and keep digging. As days pass, the siege camp swells like a bloated tick. Tents appear, carts line the roads, fires dot the horizon. Merchants arrive too, because of course they do, offering overpriced wine, blessed arrowheads, and boiled turnips wrapped in leaves. You trade a spare bootlace for a mostly edible onion. No regrets. Siege weapons begin to take shape. Trebuchets rise slowly, like skeletal monsters from the mud. Their long arms creak ominously in the breeze. You help stack rocks, big, flat, jagged, things that will soon fly through the air to shatter walls and skulls alike. Historians still argue whether trebuchets or battering rams were more effective. Trebuchets had range and terror value. Rams had brute force and drama. You think both are terrifying, and sincerely hope you won't be on the receiving end of either. Then comes the day you help roll a siege tower into place. It's enormous, taller than a house, wrapped in damp hides to prevent burning. It groans with every foot of movement. You strain with a dozen others to push it into position, wheels churning through muck like stubborn oxen. The enemy sends a few warning arrows. One grazes a man's calf. No one stops. Inside the city, you can see defenders moving shadows behind crenellations. Tiny silhouettes hurrying back and forth. You lock eyes with someone on the wall for a brief moment. Then they vanish. You wonder what they saw in your face. Every night, the camp buzzes with tension. Rumors swirl like smoke about tunneling under the walls, about poisoned wells, about betrayal from within. You don't believe half of it, but you keep your dagger close, just in case. One evening, someone fires a flaming arrow over the walls. It lands in an empty cart and fizzles out. Still, the symbolism's there. The siege has begun in earnest. Quirky superstition. Some soldiers spit on their arrowheads before firing them in a siege, claiming it cursed the enemy's soul. One archer in your squad insists on reciting a limerick with every shot. He says it improves his aim. It doesn't, but it's entertaining. You join a watch team that hauls Nightstone's massive rounded boulders meant for the trebuchets. Your job, move them from pile to sling. You wear gloves. Still, your palms bleed. The stones are smooth, cold, and strangely impersonal for things that will end lives. There's a break in the pattern. One morning messengers approach from the city under a white flag. You're told they're negotiating. Maybe surrender is coming. Maybe a truce. Maybe a trick. You wait for hours. Nothing happens. That night, more rocks fly. The next week brings disease. The latrines overflow. The flies double. A fever spreads like fire. You help carry 3 corpses out of a tent. No one says a word. But still, the wall doesn't fall. And then, it does. It starts with a massive crash. One of the trebuchet crews scores a perfect hit dead center on a weakened stretch of wall. Stones tumble like sugar cubes. Dust clouds bloom. You hear the cry ripple across camp. Breach. You don't celebrate. You get your gear. You're in the second wave. The first goes in screaming, climbing ladders, charging through rubble. Some make it. Most don't. You watch as the breach churns with chaos. Arrows rain down. Boiling oil sizzles. Spears jab like clockwork. Then it's your turn. You run. You slip. You scramble over cracked stone. A man next to you takes a bolt to the shoulder and spins like a broken marionette. You don't stop. Inside, it's mayhem, close quarters, shouting steel blood. You see a man swinging a mace with both hands, eyes wild. You duck, lunge, block. It's not a battle, it's a bottlenecked panic. You grip your sword tighter. Historians still debate whether defenders were more effective in the breach or atop the walls. From where you're standing knee-deep in rubble and blood, you vote for the defenders. They have the advantage of desperation. But numbers win eventually. The city's outer gate falls. Not long after, the enemy retreats into the inner keep. You don't follow, not yet. The order is given to halt and hold. You collapse beside a shattered statue. You're shaking. Not from fear, though, that's still there, but from sheer exhaustion. And outside the city, the trebuchets creak again. Because this siege isn't over. It's just moved to the next layer. So, here you are. Inside the city walls, but not in the city. Not really. Just the outer shell. What once was the proud perimeter now looks like a kicked anthill. Broken stone, fallen beams, discarded weapons, and too many still forms lying. Where they fell, some soldiers pick through the debris, looking for loot. Others sit quietly, too dazed to move. You find a dry spot near a half-smashed fountain. The water still trickles from its cracked mouth, gurgling like it's trying to speak. You let your fingers hover in the cool stream for a moment. Not to wash, just to remember what clean water feels like. Then the shouting starts. Orders, new formations. Reinforcements moving in. You're not even halfway done with this siege. The inner keep still stands, defiant and distant, guarded behind a secondary wall and a sturdy wooden gate bristling with iron spikes. The commanders want it taken, and they want it now. You sigh. So do the others. You join a crew tasked with wheeling a battering ram into position. Its crew just a massive beam of timber hung from chains in a makeshift shelter on wheels. You remember hearing that pigs were sometimes used to burn out wooden gates, greased and set aflame, of all things. Not today. Today it's brute. Force historians still argue whether fire or rams were more effective for inner-city defenses. Rams were straightforward. Fire was unpredictable. Today, fire's too risky one. Spark, and half your army could ignite. What with the heat and dry straw everywhere. The ram rolls slowly. It creaks, jerks, and groans with each foot. You help pull it up a narrow street, where arrow slits stare down at you like judgmental eyes. A few shafts whistle down. One hits a soldier square in the thigh. He screams. The rest of you keep moving. At the base of the gate, you pause, wait for the command. Then, with all your strength, you swing the beam forward. It hits the gate with a thud that reverberates in your bones, again and again, rhythmically, like a heartbeat or a countdown. You can hear defenders above, shouting, dropping rocks. A bucket of something smelly and hot crashes down nearby. It misses, this time, quirky fact. Some soldiers believed that yelling insults while ramming the gate weakened the enemy's morale. One of your mates screams, your bread's stale and your chickens are bald. Not exactly poetry, but it gets a laugh. Eventually, the ram splinters. Not the gate, the ram. The beam cracks. The assault pauses. You fall back, panting, muscles trembling. The commanders regroup, already planning the next approach. Then come the ladders. Again, different angle, different gate. This time, you're not in the vanguard. You're on roof duty. You're sent up a nearby building with two others to provide cover fire. It's a half-collapsed bakery, the scent of long-gone flour still faint in the air. From the roof, you can see the inner courtyard. Guards running, archers ducking, civilians herded into basements. You notch an arrow, aim, fire, repeat. You don't aim for faces. You aim for shapes. It's easier that way. Some part of you has gone numb. Maybe that's necessary. Historians still debate the role of rooftop archers during urban sieges. Some claim they were decisive. Others say they were just targets with a better view. You duck behind a chimney as a bolt zips past your ear, and decide the truth is both. Then you hear it, the cheer. The inner gate is down. You descend into the chaos again. The final push is brutal. Hallways, staircases, courtyards packed tight with smoke and bodies. You can't tell who's who half the time. Everyone's shouting. Everyone's swinging. You find yourself face to face with a boy. Younger than you. Barely has hair on his chin. He's holding a kitchen knife like it's a broadsword. You hesitate so. Does he dut? Then someone knocks him down from behind. You move on. You don't look back. The defenders scatter. Some flee. Some drop their weapons. Some just sit down, stunned. Your side wins. If this mess can be called winning. Quirky superstition. Soldiers were told never to sit on the threshold of a captured keep. It was said to invite bad luck. So, you lean on the wall just next to the door instead. The looting begins almost immediately. You see it in waves. Men tearing tapestries, smashing wine casks, pocketing trinkets. Some grab food. Others grab silver. One man walks by with a velvet chair balanced on his shoulders, like a prized turkey. You don't ask. You find yourself in a small side room, probably once a study. It's quiet, dusty. A half-burned candle sits on the table. There's a book, miraculously untouched. You open it. You can't read half the words. But you turn the pages anyway, slowly, like you're remembering something important. Like silence. Then someone calls your name. Time to move again. You help. Round up prisoners. Civilians, mostly hands raised, eyes wide, faces blank with shock. You're told not to harm them. Most of your unit listens. Most of you escort a group of townsfolk to the edge of the square, where an officer is taking names. One woman clutches a wrapped bundle so tightly you think it might be gold. It's not. It's a swaddled infant, asleep. Despite the noise, the sun begins to set. The city is yours, but it feels hollow. Historians still argue whether the psychological toll of sieges outweighed the physical. You feel that debate playing out inside your ribs like your heart isn't sure what beat it's supposed to follow anymore. You sit on the steps of a ruined chapel. You don't pray, you just sit. Let the dust settle. Let your breathing slow. Around you, the city sags like an exhausted beast. No more arrows, no more battering rams. Just wind through the shattered windows and the low hum of morning beneath. The celebration, and for the first time in weeks, you realize the fight is over. For now. Peace after a siege is not the peace you imagine. It doesn't arrive on golden banners or carry soft lullabies. No one wraps you in clean sheets and thanks you for your sacrifice. No. Peace, when it finally crawls into the bones of a medieval battlefield, feels more like exhaustion, thick, gray, and heavy as wet wool. The city is taken. The flags have changed, but the tension hasn't left. It clings to every street corner and every ruined rooftop. The locals eye you with a mixture of fear and fury. You don't blame them. You try not to look anyone in the eye. Your first assignment post-siege. Clearing bodies. You're given gloves that do little, and a scarf for the smell, which does even less. Some corpses are fresh, others, not so much. You work with a team hauling them onto carts bound for a mass grave outside the walls. No ceremony. Just mud and silence. One of your comrades hums a tune to distract himself. Another vomits. You find a child still clutching a toy horse. You pause. Someone taps your shoulder. You move on. Historians still argue whether mass graves after sieges were organized for sanitation, or simply convenience. You decide it's both. The stench is unbearable. And the flies more of them now than soldiers. After the dead are moved, it's time to rebuild. You're put on patrol. The officers want the city stabilized, which mostly means standing at corners with a spear and a bored expression, while keeping an eye on shops, bakeries, and public squares. Some townsfolk start returning to daily life, but it's a quiet, broken version of it. A few try selling bread again. A smith hammers out bent tools. A child draws an ash on a stone wall. The commanding noble rides through occasionally, surveying his new prize. He gives speeches from horseback about unity, victory, rebuilding. His armor shines. His smile doesn't. You wonder if he ever lifted a shovel during the siege. Quirky fact. Some conquerors used chalk symbols on doors to mark which homes had been cleared or taxed. You're handed a stick of white chalk and told to do the same. You mark the doors silently, one by one, while the occupants peek out from behind shutters. You overhear debates at the campfires. Some men want to stay, others want to leave immediately. You fall somewhere in between. The city is stable, yes, but it's also haunted by the past, by the choices everyone just made, by the things you can't quite scrub from your hands. There's a prisoner transfer, too. High-ranking defenders are loaded onto wagons bound for ransom or trial. You escort them through the streets. They don't speak. You try not to stare. But you wonder, did they feel fear during the breach? Did they feel rage? Or were they like you, simply tired? At night, the city feels eerie. No music, no laughter. Just the creak of shutters, and the occasional bark of a dog. You sleep inside a half-burned chapel, now roof partially collapsed, pews scorched. You've claimed a corner near a broken stained glass window. The moonlight spills in purple and red. Sometimes you imagine the saints in the glass judging you. Sometimes you apologize. Quirky superstition. Soldiers believed sleeping in sacred ruins brought dreams from the dead. You don't dream. Not anymore. You begin noticing small signs of return. A woman hangs laundry on a line. A boy chases a cat through a ruined courtyard. A tinker sets up a stall near the fountain, fixing pans with slow patience. Life tries, stubbornly, to resume. Historians still debate how long it took cities to recover. After sieges, Some say a generation. Some say they never fully did. You don't need books to know it's slow. Fragile work like patching a torn sail with thread made of spider webs. One afternoon you're told to help with the church bells. The ropes are tangled, and the mechanism's stuck. You climb the stairs with another soldier. The bell tower offers a wide view, rooftops like broken teeth, streets like veins dried of blood. The soldier with you lights a pipe. "Would you stay here?" he asks. You don't answer right away. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on what you're trying to outrun. You help untangle the ropes, grease the gears, and give the bell a test ring. The sound rolls out across the city, mournful, uninvited. You wonder what it means now. A warning, a celebration, a funeral. The days blur. You begin writing again. Scratching lines on the back of an old shield. Not letters to home, just notes. A name here, a place there. You list the faces you remember. Most you don't know well. A cook who sang while he stirred stew. A boy who carved dice. A woman who could tie perfect knots. Little things fading. Fast. Then, word arrives. You're moving out. The siege is over. The army's next destination lies several days away. Another stronghold. Another war. You're given half a day to prepare. You pack your things slowly. You visit the market one last time. Buy a handful of dried cherries from a vendor with kind eyes. You return to the chapel. Take one shard of glass from the stained window red, shaped like a leaf, and tuck it into your pouch. As the column forms at the city gate, you look back, not at the towers, not at the flags, but at the people. A child waves from a balcony. You raise a hand. You're not sure they see you. Then the march begins, and the city, like all cities touched by war, becomes part of the trail behind you. Another name, another story. You don't know what awaits at the next stop, but you know what you carry now, and it's heavier than your pack. The days stretch long as the army winds down. Yet another dirt road, your boots pounding the ground in rhythm with 100 others. You've left the ruined city behind, but its dust clings to your gear, your clothes, your lungs. You don't talk much. Nobody does. The only real sound is the soft thud of feet, the squeal of a reluctant cartwheel, and the occasional horse snorting as if even it's had enough. This is the part of war one writes songs about. Marching in peace sounds noble, triumphant. But what you feel is mostly fatiguing, an uncomfortable awareness that peace never really sticks. It's more like the quiet between storms. A polite pause before the next hammer swing, and it leaves too much room for memory. You pass abandoned villages, charred beams, crumbled walls, a well that hasn't seen a bucket in years. Someone jokes that the goats have unionized and claimed the land. You smile weakly. It's the first time your face has remembered how. One evening, camp is set near a wide river. Not for battle, not for siege, just to rest. The officers allow it. Maybe they feel it too. That heaviness behind the ribs. You strip off your tunic and wade in. The cold water bites, but it's the cleanest you've felt in weeks. You dunk your head, and imagine everything washing off blood, smoke, screams. Of course it doesn't, but for a few moments, you float, and that's enough. Back on shore, someone starts humming. It catches on. A dozen quiet voices murmuring the same tune, barely in sync. A lullaby, you think? Or a hymn? Maybe both. The sound rolls soft over the water like fog. You dry off by the fire with a shirt that smells like ash and mint. No one's sure where the mint came from. Probably someone's secret pouch of herbs meant for trade. You don't ask. You just inhale, thankful. Quirky fact. Many medieval soldiers kept small bundles of herbs in their satchels, not just for scent, but as charms. Lavender for protection. Thyme for courage. You wonder if you should have carried thyme, or maybe just more bread. The next morning, the captain announces disbandment for some. Not the whole army, but part of the host is being released to return home, at least for a time. You're one of them, the camp buzzes. Soldiers pack, say hasty goodbyes, share hard bread and worse jokes. One man hugs you awkwardly, then insists it never happened. Another asks if you want to travel together for a stretch. You nod, Why not? Historians still argue about medieval troop retention, how long soldiers served, how willingly they returned. Some never left at all. Some went home, only to find it to change find they had changed too much. War has a way of doing that. You walk for days through green hills and familiar smells. The birdsong feels louder now, like your ears finally noticed it again. You pass a ruined mill, a sleeping dog, a child flying a cloth kite with a stick for a spine. Eventually, you reach the edge of your home village. It's smaller than you remember. The path leading in is overgrown, the old fence post you used to sharpen sticks on. Now a splintered stump. You pause, breathe, then walk in. A few faces recognize you. One older man offers a stiff nod. A girl you knew as a toddler now has a child of her own, clinging to her skirts. Someone laughs behind a curtain. Someone slams a door. Life, uninterrupted. You head for your family's house. The roof is patched, the garden wild, but it's there. You're not sure how to knock, so you don't. You just open the door. The wind down starts here. Mother doesn't say anything when she sees you. Just puts her hands to her mouth, then touches your face, like she's testing if you're real. You nod. She nods. That's all. Later that night, you sit on the steps beneath a sky freckled with stars. The air is cool. Still, a little fire crackles. Nearby, nothing fancy. Just some dry wood and kindling that smells like pine. Your limbs ache with the kind of pain that doesn't beg for a remedy. It's not a wound, it's a knowing. A weight that's settled in your joints like old dust. You hear a barn owl call. A dog rustles in the straw. Somewhere behind you, someone hums the same lullaby you heard by the river. You don't know the words, but the melody stays in your chest. Like it was waiting for a quiet night like this. The sword you carried now leans against the door, its hilt dulled from use. The edge isn't sharp anymore. It doesn't need to be. Not tonight. You shift slightly, eyes half closed. Let the wind brush your cheek like a hand you almost remember. Your breath slows. Your heartbeat softens, and as sleep creeps in like a gentle fog, you think, you made it. You came back. And though war may come again someday tonight, you're home. Tonight, you're safe. Tonight, at last, you can rest.